Marc, how did you get into backgammon?
I got into backgammon when I was 17 or 18 years old. Living in Copenhagen at that time, you had quite a lot of backgammon exposure because you had weekly tournaments on cafes around the town and all. Back then you could play online for money, so that was a pretty big thing for me, that I could actually make money playing backgammon. And of course I wanted to improve my game, so I win rather than lose money. And being from Copenhagen, you have a lot of community around you, lots of very strong players. I was playing and competing in the local tournaments with some of the best players in the world, basically. And it didn't take more than a year or two, then I was already at a grandmaster level. Then I met Sander Leilhoff, one of my very best friends, and he was already at that time probably the best player in the world, actually, in the 2000 zeros, mid zeros, late zeros. And he recruited me to his sports betting business, so I started doing that as well. I then recruited Tue, and we worked together for several years. When we got to around 2016 and 2017, the idea of Backgammon Galaxy started to emerge. Tue, how did you get into backgammon?
It was one occasion where my brother, who was very much into backgammon, and he was like, let's go check out this tournament. I don't know if I knew it was the Nordic Open, but it was the Nordic Open. There's a few things I remember very vividly. A beginner's tournament, double tournament with Mick Larsen. I think we were playing against Akiko or Michi, and how I was like not knowing what double and cube was, and he told me like, Tue, it's time for you to double. Okay, so I took this strange cube and put it on the board, and like a little insecure geek like turned it around and like pushed it slowly towards him, like he looked over at me like okay, that was a nice double, I guess. Then another very defining moment for my life actually was that Tommy Keane, who's one of our great backgammon friends in Copenhagen, he had noticed me and my brother. He invited us to come and meet Marc, and Marc was like a very easygoing guy. He invited us to join his club, and it was like a perfect fit. University students and kind of same humor, trying to learn the game, and he was a good teacher. And from there we played a lot of different people on a lot of different boards, cycling around Copenhagen, board under my arm, cycling in the rain to some little strange club place, playing some funny guy. Yeah, it was a nice time of my life, just a poor university student and playing a lot of backgammon. Wilson, what about you? How did you get into backgammon?
I got into backgammon. I remember I was studying back at the design school in Kolding, 2008. And during that time I was hanging out with my friend Jonas, who was also at the school. After we graduated, we would have this tradition to go to an English pub. In the bar they would have these different board games. One evening we decided, why don't we just give it a go and try and see what this game is all about. We opened up the board and we had to look up the rules on our phones because we haven't tried playing it before. So we looked up the starting position, managed to set up the board, and then we rolled the dice, and we just instantly got hooked, both of us. Our fascination with the game was the way it looked and the feel and texture of the game. So the more we played it, the more hooked we got. And then I also started geeking out on making backgammon accessories, because I'm all about aesthetics. I'm all about making things look beautiful. One of the things I noticed about backgammon, especially when playing it in the club, going around to different tournaments, people had scoreboards that just looked absolutely horrible. And that's how the Take Point scoreboard was born. And that's when Marc noticed that this guy is like, okay, here's a guy who's interested in backgammon, and he's kind of a good graphic designer. He does some product development, etc., etc. And he needed a graphic designer at the time for the Backgammon Galaxy project. So we had a meeting at a bar in Copenhagen to discuss the project, and I was kind of hooked on the idea because I love backgammon and I love graphic design. And with this project, it's just a combination of the two of the things that I love the most. So I think that was a good match. And yeah, that was back in 2016. And then it's just been rolling from there, basically.